Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the era of composable banking. My name is Alexey, and I'm part of Mambu Solutions Engineering. Our team is guiding banks and fintechs on launching their digital propositions in cloud through technology advisory and solution architecture.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Neha. I'm the product manager here at the Ecosystem Stripe team. We're responsible for doing anything and everything that has to do with the Mambu marketplace, right from the fact of choosing the right technology partners and vendors to actually going ahead and building solid integrations with them using our MPO. The Ecosystem Tribe does it all. Yeah.
So let's start. As we just learned this morning, today's banks must be built to change, constantly, rapidly, fearlessly. On the contracts, the traditional banks were actually built to last. And the winners in today's world, as we also learned, will be the ones who deliver the best customer experience. And to do that, you actually need to compose the new services or the new features faster than the rest of the pack. And this is the reason why we're actually introducing you the composable banking approach. It is based on well-established principles of composability in system design and software engineering that you may be familiar with. The idea is actually very simple. Instead of giving you a monolithic solution and locking you down into it, we bring you composable banking options that are designed for speed, agility, and flexibility. You actually heard about modularity probably for years from many of the traditional vendors. And they've been promising it to all of you. However, what they really mean is that they provide a predefined suite of proprietary modules that are extending the capabilities of their core solution. They're extensible, but neither they are open nor flexible. And a metaphor that you can think about is the jigsaw puzzle. You can indeed build a full picture, but only from the pieces of your set. You can't really take any pieces from the other set and put it in. Composable systems, on the other hand, are self-contained and designed for interoperability from day zero. And this is where the API-first approach is coming in, and the great metaphor for that is actually using the Lego blocks.
Cool. So extending from where Alexey left us, we talked about building banks with components of Lego bricks. In our case, we call these components technology vendors. Now, we firmly believe that no one technology vendor can do it all, can definitely not innovate in every field. That's exactly the reason why we go out in the market and find a bunch of technology vendors for you. We also try and maintain a good amount of due diligence because it has to be done in order to maintain the quality of the ecosystem. Behind what you see is just a screenshot of what the Mambu marketplace offers. We often go out in the market whenever we find something interesting. We look into their product and technology. There's often a very first-hand reference to these technology vendors when it comes to customers and prospects who tell us what's new in the market. And then, of course, vendors are talking to us all the time, pitching their products and services. The whole point is to see compatibility between Mambu and the technology vendor itself. Now, it's not all that hunky-dory. We start off with actually looking into how SaaS this entire technology vendor is. If you provide APIs, we try and look into your quality of the APIs. Also, not just the current product offering is enough. We also want to understand what's the future bringing it to yourself. At the same time, we look into other different components. We look at the geographies that you're working with. We sometimes even look into pricing. We look into the operational models. And it's a bit of a tedious process, but across the time, we do a bunch of demos, workshops, sometimes even POCs, before we even onboard a vendor into the Mambu marketplace. Again, the whole point is to see the product fit, the culture fit, and the overall way of working together. Next, in the next section, we're trying to focus on something that we're calling as solution blueprints or target architecture blueprints. Given the fact that we're talking to banks, fintechs, lending institutes day in and day out, We're in a very unique position to tell you how to build a bank from scratch, just based on our experience. Now, what does the solution engineering team do here? They go out in the market, they understand what the customer says. As Eugene says, shut up and listen many a times. And then we try and come up with sample architectures in a particular geography, a particular market. We also, in the next bunch of slides, we'll try to fine-tune these offerings for you. We'll show you how a specific lending architecture could look like, a specific neobanks architecture could look like. Of course, we've taken some generic liberties for the sake of this presentation. The actual flavor in these architectures come from your actual business needs, your requirements, and the kind of customer experience that you're trying to provide. Next up, well, we do it, but what's in it for you guys? While you're piecing together the architecture, the first and foremost thing that's required is speed to market. Every time you're delaying that one feature that has to be moved to the market, that McKinsey intern that had moved the salary account from the traditional bank to Revolut, who's stopping them to move from Revolut to TransferWise? The next one is definitely the speed in the market. When the technology focus used to be more towards the back office, banks used to be actually shipping a product or a feature once in a month, once in a year, maybe once in 2 years. Now that the technology focus has moved and changed to front office, the expectation lies to be shipping products in a matter of weeks sometimes. Of course, apart from the customer expectations, there's this huge expectations from the regulations, and your product needs to change based on that. And third, but not the last one, is flexibility and choice. If you're scaling, you need to be able to plug and play your vendors, and therefore you need speed, and you also need a platform that lets you experiment with these vendors and technology providers. As we promised, we'll start focusing on some specifics. The first target architecture blueprint is for an SME lending use case. And if you look at it even more closely, we focused on the UK bank lending environment here. If you just ignore the brand names over here, we're looking at a broad sort of lending process which starts with a loan origination system. It's the loan origination that's sitting separated from Mambu, but yet there's a lot of chattiness happening between these two. And the bank employee is literally moving the loan step by step from an early qualification processes even to the late disbursements through this loan origination system, constantly interacting with the core, but not knowing about it. Next up, if you go to the downstream processes, they're the more functional bits of the processes. The payments part, specifically when you're dealing with the loan disbursements as well as the loan repayments. And again, then, there are few more nuances to it. What if you're just a lender with a banking partner? What if you're a banker with a lending solution? There are different payment setups needed for each one. And then the more functional bits like accounting. Who needs to take care of it if Mambu can? And also, if you're moving into different markets, the same accounting solution wouldn't be compliant, wouldn't be giving you the right solution. Therefore, you do need the flexibility of choice to pick and choose. And what better if, in order to provide you a speed to market, you have everything pre-integrated. You can test it quickly, you can plug and play off, and you can test what works for you the best. We can also provide you the reasoning why we went and integrated something. The second bit is definitely the ability to choose. If you're in the UK market and you have a particular payment provider, you will have to move to a new one if you're expanding to Eurozone. The same goes with accounting. An accounting solution which is applicable in US is most probably not compliant in the dark market. And therefore, what ecosystem team does, if you look at it, is that we're always thinking outwards in. We look at what kind of a customer journey is a lender trying to provide to its customer. Then we look at what are the functional components that the lender needs to make these things happen. And then we do a very functional bit of going ahead, integrating these two systems so that you're focusing on the customer experience bit and not, in order to use a very cliche term, trying to reinvent the wheel.
Thank you, Neha. So as we just learned in a market as dynamic, as unpredictable as banking, agility moves from nice to have features to actually your survival issue. And for the software developers, the difference between the real agility and the fake agility is actually the most stark. Well, we believe that you shouldn't actually have to take a certification course to start building and composing banking services. It should be very easy for developers to spin up new sandboxes and get access to the environments, whatever they need to. It should be also very easy to rapidly configure the connections using open APIs and webhooks. And as well, the end-to-end developer experience also matters. So starting from the way you're discovering the APIs to making your first call, but also troubleshooting the error that you are getting. Is it a self-serve experience? Do you need to call a vendor, or you have a catalog of errors, you have a community forum where you can ask? And the turnaround time is drastically different. To go to the next example of the retail neobank, we are looking at the customer onboarding process. And typically, the customer onboarding process is something that you would initiate from your mobile or web application, and then it goes through an underlying process that would kick in. It will start from the KYC part, where you're going to check the documents of your customer. Then it may go into the AML part, where you're going to run the customer against PEPs and sanctions list. And then in the end, you would start originating products, which could be some of their core products, such as a deposit or lending products, and potentially issuing a physical or virtual card. So using Mambu Process Orchestrator, you actually can design this process in the way that it will support your customer experience. And this is where you can both use the existing connectors in the same composable way, but also integrate with any APIs that you may have in your own ecosystem that you don't see on this picture. So this is where the openness and composability is coming in. And also, as Ben mentioned this morning, for us, building the MVP version of connector actually takes 2 to 4 weeks. And this is because of the real development agility that not just Mambu, but also the components that you see here on the list provide you. And in the end of the day, it actually doesn't really matter if you use the Mambu Process Orchestrator or you're just selecting your favorite serverless or microservices technology to build the similar architecture. So what also enables the success of the marketing and the data science teams within the fintechs and banks today? Well, first, you actually want to connect your entire ecosystem and extract all the data that sits in the different platforms, so nothing is left behind. You also don't really want to spend time on constructing and building your data pipeline, but you rather want to work with the insights that you can get from data. And also, you want to have it in a self-service way. So you want to define how the different data sources are actually relating to one another and what this data actually means. So then you can combine all of that and get a full view of different metrics that actually relate to your business. And this is where, as Ben announced earlier today, we're actually providing you the 2 new approaches to get the data in the real time from Mambu. So the first approach is using the component called Stitch. So the ELT, and again, this is not a typo, is a modern approach or a modern variation on older process of extract, transform, and load, which is ETL, in which transformations actually take place before the data is loaded. And running this transformation in a traditional approach usually makes a much more complex reconciliation process. Whether the ELT approach actually gives you the ability to get the data faster and get it available in your business intelligence much more quickly. So Stitch is one of the leading SaaS solutions that now provides the Mambu connector next to over the 100 other connectors to different software tools like Salesforce, Oracle NetSuite, your analytics platforms. And basically, it allows you to take this data and put it into the data warehouse of your choice, whether it's AWS, Google BigQuery, or maybe even Snowflake. And then the last part of this approach is the self-service business intelligence tools. So platforms like Looker, which is now part of Google, or Tableau, which is part of Salesforce, actually allow you to do the transformation of the data in a maintainable way. So your data pipeline doesn't really break when, let's say, one of the source systems are changing their data output. And also, this approach doesn't just go for the business intelligence. We see that the modern approach to building the regulatory reporting or building accounting is also quite often taking the raw data, put into your data warehouse, and then having transformations on the last part. And hey, if you don't want to use Stitch, it's again not a mandatory component in the open ecosystems. So we also have introduced the streaming APIs that actually allow you to capture the data or the events that are happening in Mambu, as well as in other platforms, and then stream it using some open platforms like AWS Kinesis or maybe Apache Kafka, and put it again into your data warehouse and use it for later. Today in the afternoon, we're going to have a session by Asto, which is part of Santander, that actually is using Mambu webhooks and Kafka together to build the data pipeline. So if you're interested in more practical example, I recommend you this session as well. So how do we actually take all those blueprints and actually bring those blueprints to life? Well, first thing that we have been doing in the Mambu solution engineering team since last summit, we actually expanded our team for the global coverage. And right now, we do have solution architects all the way from US to Latin America, to London, to Amsterdam, Singapore, and Sydney. And as I just mentioned in the beginning of the session, being the regional experts both in banking as well as in product and architecture, our role is to act as your trusted advisor to help you tailor those blueprints and those ecosystems to actually demands of your business, to select the right partners and to build the right designs, so you're actually on the right track. And of course, as I mentioned, we act as an advisory. There is still part when you need to build that. And this is where a lot of fintechs that we work with are building their own cross-functional developer teams. But also we are working with the banks who may be working with the consultancy partners.
Yep. So next up, we do set up an internal solution advisory team so that they can consult with you as to how to put together these target architectures. But again, your internal teams need to be fine-tuned according to the new, very ambitious technology project that you have. The design team needs hand-holding. The operation team needs hand-holding. Of course, the new stuff that's coming up. There's the regulatory stuff, the transformation things, and a lot more. What we try and do is to collect a bunch of partners. Our commercial partnership team does that, which ranges from expertise coming from consultancy and also to a more regional IT capability in the form of system integrations. We often try to fine-tune it based on markets. We also try to fine-tune it based on an expertise in a particular domain. And of course, it always helps when we go and tell them, hey, this is how Mambu works. This is to the extent to which you can take a solution if you have Mambu as a core. So now, just to sort of sum it up, if we have to come to the end of this presentation and say, hey, this is what we're saying, we're trying to say the 3 pillars of composable architecture. It always and always starts with a highly configurable composable core. Your core needs to have the ability and the flexibility to be able to plug in and plug out of multiple systems with the help of RESTful APIs. Keeping an MPO in between, a process orchestrator, only helps in keeping the architectures more segregated and simple. So nothing is tied up, and you're never tied up with just one monolith architecture. The second bit is to wrap that core around with the best of class ecosystem vendors. We are very picky about it. Sometimes the process also goes extremely tedious, but we always want to understand what's the compatibility, what's the technology, what is it that's the next thing that you're bringing. And of course, we have a very customer-centric point of view in selecting these vendors. The third, but not the least, there's a lot of functional bit and the operational bit of the work that goes in putting together or literally pulling together a project as ambitious as what you guys plan. You need IT advisory, consultancies, you need regional consultancies and drilling down deep into it, and you need a lot of expertise for it. We go out in the market, try our best to find the best of the people, help them understand what Mambu can do, help them understand what we're trying to do with composable banking and our approach, and help them piece together your bank along with you. I guess that brings us to the end of our presentation. I hope it was a productive one. I think we're having Q&A after this, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you.